Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. So before we get into this episode, of course, I do have the viewer's pick of the week at the end of the episode for a chance for one of your comments to be featured at the end of the episode and on the show. Also, I do have a Kickstarter going on for one more week for The Dancer. It's about a dancer slash assassin, and when she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her and never dealt with that trauma until now. So let's jump into this week's comics. I had 10 books to talk about here. Number 10 for me is Hulk issue 4. So this is a book that I've been wanting to enjoy, and I really love Immortal Hulk. I do like this creative team, but I haven't really been able to get into this book in general. I feel like it's very more action heavy and honestly like a little trippy. It's a bit of a trippy book where I feel like I'm on issue 50 instead of issue 4. I feel like I jumped into a middle of a book that had so many more issues behind it, and it hasn't been able to grab me as much as I want to, even though the artwork is great. I am going to stick with it until the Thor and Hulk crossover and make a decision then if I'm going to keep it on my pull list or not. So that is my number 10 pick, and moving on to number 9, which is Fantastic Four, issue 40. Honestly, sad to see this so low. I do like this book a lot, but I didn't really love Reckoning War. I didn't like the Alpha issue, and I feel like that continues more in the vein of that type of storytelling in this issue, where it's very heavy on plot, very heavy on the cosmic stuff, and there is some interesting movement. I will say by the end, we get to see Mr. Fantastic announced that he's going to die. So that was kind of crazy. And you're like, oh man, is another Fantastic Four member going to die? I feel like this happens every 2 years or so. But yeah, there's definitely the question of that. And I thought that was an interesting cliffhanger. But the rest of it was a lot of talking heads. There wasn't as much emotion as I thought it would be after the ramifications of an Alpha issue and diving into the main series and the main book. I felt like there was going to be a little bit more of an emotional resonance here, but it really was just about talking more about the moving pieces. So overall, I wasn't a huge fan of this one. I also thought the artwork was very crowded in a lot of spots and a little stiff. So I'm going to give that 2 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, the new Marvel book, which is Iron Fist, issue 1. I was looking forward to this. I wanted to see who this new Iron Fist was. I am not a huge Iron Fist fan, so I was like, oh, maybe this will get me into the book. I think a great example of that is Darkhawk, a character I didn't know much about, and when they introduced the new character, I really got into that new character, so I was hoping the same effect would happen here. Now, I will say that I actually think that this book focused a little bit too much on Danny, and, I like Danny as a character, and I think for fans of Danny, it was great that he was such a big part of this book, but I didn't really get the personality of our new Iron Fist. I don't think he had a lot of time to shine in this issue, and I think that was really the detriment of this premiere, where it didn't really feel unique in the regard of the character's personality. So I just wish there was a little bit more a little bit more connection here, and I honestly wish this whole issue focused on our new Iron Fist and maybe brought Danny in a little later, brought him in as a cliffhanger, and just gave a little bit more personality to this new character. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars. I do think the artwork was solid overall, but I do think like the cover art, you have I think this is Jim Chung, who did Young Avengers, had a great cover, and then the interiors not as strong here, even though I think some of the martial arts was well done. So again, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 8, I believe. Moving on to number 7, which is Aquaman The Becoming, issue 6. This is the last issue for this volume, but then we're going to go straight into Aquaman, which I'm really excited for, just to see, Jackson has developed so much as a character throughout this throughout the years, but also throughout this miniseries, really coming into his own as an Aquaman, and that really sets stage here. And then, there's some interesting movement parts with Black Manta and Aquaman and Arthur. So that's interesting to move us into Aquaman, and I feel like there was some good family drama here and some good back and forth between Arthur and Jackson, but I really like the cliffhanger of the mom. We don't really know what happened there, if she's going to die or she just really hurt, and obviously affects Jackson here and his family dynamic, which is a big root of his character, is the family drama, and that's been a big root of this series, learning more about his family more towards the mom's side because the father is always focused on. So overall, I had a good time with this one. I think it was a good finale and a good bridge between this series and the new series that's coming out. And the artwork is always solid for this book as well. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6. The finale of the Eltarian War, Power Rangers, issue 16. This is also, so now Ryan Parrott is going to only be doing this series, the Power Rangers series, and we have Matt Groom, who's going to be taking over Mighty Morphin. And I thought this was a really good conclusion. It was very much about picking up the pieces and seeing where characters are going to be, especially Zordon and Zed. I think they had an interesting final conversation. But I liked, honestly, even the smaller moments than that. I liked the conversation between Trini and Lord Draken. I thought that was really interesting. And I like this interesting dynamic between the two. I feel like since this series, those are the ones you unexpectedly saw kind of come together. They're not friends, but they have such an interesting dynamic. So I like that. I really loved the skull moment with his girlfriend. I thought that was really cute, and that they tied that together. So I just thought there was a lot of good, smaller character moments here to get us into the new chapter of Power Rangers following this war. So overall, I'm going to give that 3.5 stars. I thought there were some good facial expressions. Overall here, there are times where I feel like the artwork is a little crowded with the style that it has, but I do like the art style and especially those vibrant colors. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Or maybe that was number 6. That was number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Thor, issue 22. Another great edition of this book. This book never lets me down. And we get to see the fight between Thor and his hammer. And exactly the motives of his hammer. And why they feel the way they feel. And them becoming kind of a person here. And we have a really big shock here. We knew somebody from Thor's life was going to die. And it looks like it was Odin. It looks like it was Thor's father. And I thought his sacrifice was really well done. It was built up well. And it made sense for what was happening there. And then artistically, visually, we have a really cool costume for Thor at the end of this, and to get us to this final showdown. So I think overall it had everything. It had mythos building, it had good character moments, it had some really interesting visuals, and it was just a really well balanced issue, and some good shocks with the Odin death. I'm guessing he's dying, because they did say there was a character that was going to pass away, so I'm guessing it's Odin after this one. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number number 4, which is Reign, issue 2. And this was the second issue after I thought one of the best comics of the year thus far. I loved the premiere, and I thought this did a pretty solid job at picking up the pieces. I think issue 2s are always very difficult, and there was a point where it's like, okay, this is an aftermath issue. It didn't have as much oomph as that first issue, but I still really enjoyed it. I still love our main character's voice, and I like the journey that she's going on and the people that she meets along the way. Kind of has this kind of Walking Dead vibe to it because of that, and now we know where the series is gonna go, at least for the next couple issues, is her trying to find Yolanda's father and see if he's alive, see if any of her family is still alive, and maybe built her own family because of it. And there's just some interesting visuals and little moments, like the little boy having an umbrella saying, oh, I'll help you. And then just some interesting new characters that are introduced here that makes a cool cast of members here. And again, I think that's what brought me to this Walking Dead conclusion, just was the way they introduced new characters. So overall, I thought it was a very solid issue. I like the art style. I like that it's very bright for a very dark book. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Crowded, Volume 3. This is the last chapter of Crowded, a book I really, really enjoy, and I'm glad that they were able to finish it off. I really liked it as a single issue experience, but it was really nice that they had the opportunity to release it as a graphic novel and at least finish up their story. And we got a lot of answers, and we got some really good movement here, where we finally find out why Charlie, what her secret was, and why this Reaper campaign was happening. And it was a lot of self-loathing, where she actually made it herself and forgot about it. And we get to see the big conclusion where they fight against the people who are behind all this, and save Charlie's life, and Charlie to save herself save herself from herself, I guess. And then, the Vita and Charlie dynamic was wonderful here. We get to see more of the assassin and her become a full character. But I like that they didn't end up together. I think that was probably my favorite part of the whole book, is that, you thought this relationship was building and you kind of realized they probably would have been very toxic for each other. And then they end up with different people, but they're still friends and they still have a connection with each other. And I honestly really enjoyed that aspect. It was something I didn't expect, but I think made the story even better. And the artwork is so fun and funny, and it's just a well balance of, again, more funny moments, more emotional moments, and a lot of action moments here as well, since it was in Act 3. So I enjoyed this one. If you haven't read Crowded, this is a perfect way to kind of binge read it all, get volume 1, 2, and now 3. So yes, giving that 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Nightwing, issue 89. I had a fun time with this issue. We get to see the 2 titles that Tom Taylor's working on, Superman and Nightwing, come together. I love the opener, just seeing how John and Nightwing, I guess, met or at least formed a relationship. And I think it did a pretty good job at tying into what's going on in Superman, but at the same time still tying into what's going on with Nightwing. And the visuals are just so fun. I love the bed scene with Barbara and Dick Grayson, where they're just wearing like superhero pajamas. So I enjoyed that aspect. And just the little moments. I love the lollipop scene with John and Dick and just them connecting. And, there's a pretty interesting premise going on right now as well, where we get to see superpowered characters are getting harmed. And it looks like Lex Luthor is behind it. So the plot builds pretty nicely here. So honestly, it just seems like it's going to be a fun team-up issue to introduce maybe people who are just reading Superman to read Nightwing and vice versa. So, and like I said, the artwork is just breathtaking for this book. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 89. I just had such a fun time with this issue. I've been really, really pleasantly surprised by Queen Goblin. I think she's such an interesting character. I like her power set, where as her being a psychiatrist, her being able to get into people's minds and affecting their minds, I think is so interesting. But I think that the thing that really brought me to love this issue was just the dynamic between Black Cat, MJ, and Peter. Peter not being at his top of his game and not saying, Black Cat, don't help me. And he's like, oh yeah, no, help me. And then when Black Cat gets hurt, it's not like, oh, this is all my fault. It's like, oh, cool, MJ, can you just help Black Cat? I'll do my thing. They all worked as a team, and I really like that. And I think the MJ and Black Cat issues and that one shot really helped to bring this new flavor of, a dynamic you never knew should work. It does work. And bringing that with Peter as well, with a character obviously we've kind of seen before. We've seen the Queen Goblin type character, but just doing slight tweaks to make her interesting for the version of Peter Parker he is now as a, more wounded character. And I kind of like that Ben was on the sidelines, but he was still mentioned, and I liked the cliffhanger with his girlfriend, finding out that, it looks like Peter and her have a bit of a deal after he got out of the hospital. So I just thought it moved really well, and it just felt unique to me, even though it was stories that were familiar. There was just some nice little angles to it, and the artwork was fun. There's some really good action in this issue, so I thought it was a very solid issue. I'm giving that 4 stars, and that is my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was. And the viewer's pick of the week from last week was X Lives of Wolverine. And here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.